It's a pleasure to bring this discussion to you, to your viewing pleasure. You can see we are already in the Christmas mood in ITV. I wish you Merry Christmas in advance. In another couple of weeks, we shall be saying Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas, and Happy New Year. So today I've brought a anti-corruption icon to come and discuss with us, an appraiser of Nigeria's fight against corruption. 9th of December is International Anti-Corruption Day, and we just deem it fit that it is fit and proper to assess how far as our journey in the fight against corruption, how have we fared? How are we progressing? Are we progressing in error? Are we progressing in the right direction? This is why I decided to bring somebody who has put in over 10 years, over a decade, in the field of studying and supporting anti-corruption institutions. And that is my brother, Lukman Adefolahan. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, Lukman, Nigerians would like to meet you, and do tell us a bit more about yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jide Ojo. My name is Lukman Adefolahan. I work with 21st Century Community Empowerment Initiative. It's an organization that have a UN ECOSOC status and also an active member of United Nations Convention Against Corruption. I'm a certified corruption risk assessor, and also I work on governance and anti-corruption, both at national, regional, and international level. I work on policy, on anti-corruption with different civil society organizations before I pull out to join 21st Century with other colleagues, looking at how Nigeria is doing around their procurement as well as budget tracking. So it's a pleasure to be on the development focus with Jide Ojo this morning to appraise what Nigerian government is doing around our commitment on the fight against corruption, knowing well that tomorrow will be marked and commemorated as the International Anti-Corruption Day across the globe.
Okay, so this year's theme, what is it? This year Anti-Corruption Day celebration theme?
We are still using the theme that we have been using for the past 5 years, which is break the shame, that we should all join hands in the fight against corruption. That was the theme set aside by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, that we should sustain that theme for the past 5 years, and that is what we have been using for the past 5 years to commemorate the Anti-Corruption Day.
Okay. Is your office 21st Century, are you planning any event for tomorrow or later this week?
Yes, we are planning an event, and one of the events we are planning is we are going to issue a press release tomorrow, which we are going to disseminate across all our media platforms. Also, in collaboration with ONCAC, we are going to submit the anti-corruption pledge as part of planning for the COPS-9, that is Conference of State Party, that is coming up in Egypt next week. We are going to issue that press release jointly with over 190 civil society organizations that are members of ONCAC in Egypt.
UNCAC is United Nations Convention
Against Corruption.
Against Corruption.
It is a legal binding agreement that Nigeria is a signatory to. Nigeria signed onto UNCAC in 2003, and since that 2003, we have been following up with the implementation. If you look at our legal framework in Nigeria around the issue of anti-corruption, we derived most of the provisions that establish most of our anti-corruption agencies from the UNCAC in particular, as well as African Union Convention Against Corruption and ECOWAS Protocol. The three international instruments, the provisions in those three international instruments fit into what we are doing as a country as part of the efforts to fight corruption in Nigeria. in appraising what we are doing as a nation, we may not be there, but it is very clear that we have moved from where we were as a nation. Apart from the major anti-corruption agencies that we have in Nigeria, that is ICPC, FCC, and Code of Conduct Bureau, there are other anti-corruption agencies or ministry department agencies that have anti-corruption mandate, about 29 of them, are being coordinated by Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reform. And these are TUGA saddled with responsibility of coordination through Interagency Task Team, IATT. Nigerians will be worried, especially around the CPI being released by Transparency International.
CPI meaning Corruption Perception Index. Because our viewers are not used to those terminologies. So when you use all those acronyms, let's know exactly what they mean.
Corruption Perception Index is one of the indicators that businessmen and investors use to determine how a country is prone when it comes to issue of corruption. And as a country, we are not doing well. But the argument has been, despite the efforts of the government establishing anti-corruption agencies, especially under this administration that came up with mantra of fighting corruption, and we are still losing point when it comes to Corruption Perception Index being released by Transparency International. By February 2022, the 2021 Corruption Perception Index will be released again by CPI, and that will give us where we are as a country. Having said all this, I can tell us that we are not doing bad, but Nigerians want to see better of what we are seeing now, because in terms of asset recovery, Nigeria as a country, we are doing well, but our challenge around asset recovery is our asset management, because as at now, there is no any legal framework in place to manage asset recovery, and that has been a major problem for us, because after returning assets, management is another challenge that we are facing as a country, and that is why civil society, media, and other stakeholders have been calling on our government to see how we are going to get Proceeds of Crime Act signed into law, and other anti-corruption bill pending before National Assembly, like Whistleblowers Protection Bill is still pending before National Assembly. And if we want Nigerians to own the fight against corruption, there is need for Nigerians to be protected. We have the policy domicile with the Ministry of Finance, which to some of us we believe that keeping that policy with the Ministry of Finance is another gaps, because such policy should be domiciled within the agencies of government that Nigeria can have access to, instead of domiciling it with Ministry of Finance. And it is high time we should see what we can do to have that bill turned into law, if truly we want Nigerians to key into the fight against corruption, because if you want to give information around mismanagement or corruption acts, you need to be protected. There are protection in some of our extant laws, but it is not sufficient, and that discourages Nigerians to key into the fight against corruption. Look at the issue of our open government partnership that Nigeria signed on into 2017 after President Muhammadu Buhari attended the Anti-Corruption Summit in London. We've implemented the first National Action Plan with 14 commitments under 4 different thematic areas. Now we are implementing the second National Action Plan of OGP, which it has increased from that 4 thematic areas to 7 thematic areas now. And what we are saying now is, for us as a nation to implement all these 7 thematics around the OGP, there is need for Nigeria to own it, especially around the engagement. Another effort that this administration has made, or this country has made, is it took us about 17 years to have national anti-corruption strategies. in place. And this strategy lapsed last year. TUGA, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Justice, is in the almost completing the monitoring and evaluation of this strategy, so that we can learn some lesson around it. The strategies has 5 pillars.
Okay, let me pause you, Lukman. I know you have a lot to say, but let's be methodical. An average Nigerian watching us this morning wants to know exactly what is corruption. What exactly amounts to corruption?
What amounts to corruption is beyond what people are looking at. An average Nigerian will tell you that corruption is when you divert resources. But I always tell people that my own definition of corruption is not only in naira and kobo. Once you are not doing the right thing, you are as good as being corrupt. And I give you a simple example of a corrupt act. Once you bypass a traffic light, you can be treated as a corrupt person, because that your singular action can lead to disaster if other person is not careful. But Transparency International will define corruption as misuse or abuse of your office to have access to personal gain, which that is the one that is very common. But we should look at corruption beyond naira and kobo.
Okay, we should look at corruption beyond naira and kobo. Now, what are the various categories of corruption?
Forms of corruption include embezzlement, mismanagement of public resources, and also you can even categorize corruption to be petty and grand corruption. Petty corruption is when we are talking about administrative corruption, and when we talk about grand corruption, we are talking about corruption being perpetrated by a politically exposed person. And research has shown to us that most of the corrupt acts in Nigeria are perpetrated through procurement processes. And that is where we have huge gap as a nation. There's need for us to strengthen our procurement processes, especially by involving Nigerians. Yes, we have a very robust Public Procurement Act 2007 in place, but the implementation, especially among the MDAs, is still very low, especially when it comes to citizen participation in procurement. You agree with me that most of the politically exposed persons that are standing trial before EFCC and our courts, most of them are true procurement issues. It means if we really want to fight corruption, there is need for our anti-corruption agencies to work closely with the regulatory agency in procurement, that is Bureau of Public Procurement, and see how we can tighten the bolts, the gaps in our procurement processes. There are thresholds of approval when it comes to procurement, but what the smart guys in the MDAs are doing is they do what we call contract splitting. And when they split contract, it means they will avoid going to the bureau to go and get certificate of no objection. The act says no minister can approve beyond 300 million naira. So if I have contract of 301 million naira, I can decide to split it and advertise twice. Advertising twice means, which is a red flag, because you are going to do advert twice, you are going to set up the committee to work twice instead of once, which is a red flag that we need to look into. And part of the thing we can use to close these gaps is for the ICPC, which is one of the anti-corruption agencies that have mandate around prevention and system review to continuously conducting corruption risk assessment among our MDAs. When the corruption risk assessment is conducted in our MDAs, the vulnerabilities will be identified. And when you identify vulnerability, it helps us to develop what we call integrity plans. And when you develop integrity plans, people can follow up on how to close the gaps of those vulnerabilities in our system, especially knowing whether procurement is one of the issues. We should see how we can close the vulnerabilities in our procurement process in Nigeria.
Okay. Again, let's look at let's do a build-up. At a recent workshop you did present progress report of Nigeria's commitment to international conventions and protocols at the level of UN, AU, ECOWAS, Open Government Partnership. Run us through some of these conventions that Nigeria have signed on to and where we are with each of those conventions and protocols.
Thank you very much. Like you mentioned, the UNCAC, which is the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, is the international instrument that Nigeria signed on to at global level. And some of the provisions of the UNCAC, I can tell you that Nigeria as a country, we have fulfilled the larger part of that provisions in terms of putting structures, institutions, and legal framework in place. Having EFCC and ICPC is one of the provisions of the UNCAC, African Union, and ECOWAS protocol, because some of the provisions provided that each state parties, now state party refers to Nigeria, must establish an anti-corruption agencies that will be independent. So we have anti-corruption agencies in place, which is fulfillment of part of the provisions. Part of the provisions talks about the role of media and civil society in fighting corruption. We have civil society that are feasible in the fight against corruption in Nigeria. We have media that are feasible. That is part of what we are doing now, because we are using media to echo what government is doing around the fight against corruption. It talks about the code of conduct of the public officers. We have Code of Conduct Bureau set up. In our constitution, there are provisions on the issue of Code of Conduct Bureau as well too. Even around our electoral process, UNCAC and African Union Convention also talks about political party financing, which is one of the key issues in our electoral processes. In the case of presidential election, presidential candidate should spend beyond 500 million. The challenge there now is who is monitoring the spending. That is another challenge. But for Nigeria fulfilling the provisions in the UNCAC and African Union Convention, we say we are doing well. When we look at issue around the OGP, Nigeria happened to be
that's Open Government
Partnership that we signed on to in 2017 after the Anti-Corruption Summit in London. And we happen to be the 70th country to sign on into the Open Government Partnership. After signing on to that Open Government Partnership, we've implemented the National Action Plan 1, and currently we are on National Action Plan 2, and it makes provision for government and civil society partnership, where we have equal numbers in terms of delivery on open government partnership. The challenge also around our implementation of OGP is Nigerians owning that process, because it is when Nigerians own that process and they key into it, we will be able to get tangible results. Issue around asset falsification, tracing is another provision in UNCAC. We don't have any legal framework in place now, which is a key for us. Issue of whistleblowing protection is a provision in the UNCAC that up till now, Nigeria as a country, we are yet to have legal framework around protecting the whistleblowers. Apart from the policy put in place by the last Minister of Finance, where a certain percentage as part of incentive for whistleblowers that can give information around issue of corrupt act that will lead to final seizure. There is a provision for between 2 to 5% incentive to be given to Nigerians. But still, we need to do beyond that. We need to have a legal framework that can protect Nigerians that are ready to give information around the issue of corruption in our environment. Issue around corruption in private sector, I can tell you that we have a specialized civil society organization, integrity organization, working in the port sector. After ICPC and Code of and BPP, Bureau of Public Procurement, conducted the first ever corruption risk assessment in Nigeria, and it was conducted in our marine sector. CBI and integrity organization took it to engage further and formed a professional against corruption in the port sector, and now that is giving us results. As well as at our airport too, a corruption risk assessment was conducted, integrity plan was developed for implementation, and integrity as an organization that have interest around that issue has been following up on the implementation of that integrity plan in that sector.
Okay. You are now running us through our commitments at different regional, international, and national, sub-regional levels. So run us through the entire process.
Yes, like I mentioned, if you look at the provisions in those international treaties, both at regional, continental, and international, we are not doing bad in terms of providing or fulfilling part of the provision of those international instruments. But the challenge has been, after the review of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption process, the 2 reviews that were conducted in Nigeria, it was clearly recommended that the major challenge why we are not fulfilling those international provisions, one of them is inter-agency rivalry, which we've noticed among our anti-corruption agencies. Though we are seeing improvement after the second review, but we need to do more around that, because we have multi-layers of agencies with anti-corruption mandate. 29 of them are being coordinated by Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms. So issue of inter-agency rivalry is one of the major issues that we need to work on as a country if we really want to fulfill some of the provisions in those international instruments. Issue around the capacity was also highlighted during the review process that we need.
When was this review made?
The first one was in 2012. The second one was in 2016. So Nigeria has been reviewed twice by different countries. We've also reviewed other countries too as well.
Peer review.
It's more of peer review. There's what we call UNCAC checklist. It has about over 300 questions that they expect countries to answer. If you say you have established anti-corruption agencies, you will tick it as yes. Can we know them? You mention them. Is there any law that back their establishment? You justify all those things. So based on those review, we got some feedback from the reviewers on what we need to do better around the instruments signed onto by Nigerians. So issue of inter-agency rivalry, capacity, technology. It is high time that Nigeria needs to deploy technology to fight corruption. They talk about issue of information sharing and synergy among anti-corruption agencies, and this is one of the key issues that has been giving us problem in the fight against corruption, that makes Nigerians not to even see what the government is doing because our agencies are not sharing information because one would like to take glory that I'm the one doing this, and it is high time we should stop all those level of not sharing information among themselves. Also, funding was critical during the 2 reviews as well. And in order to close the funding gaps, most of the relevant partners in Nigeria supported our anti-corruption agencies. As a pilot project, 7 of the anti-corruption agencies were supported by the relevant partners in Nigeria around issue of training, issue of infrastructure, as well as support around ICT, where to the level of paying for their subscription, sending their staff for overseas training, which some of them commended the partners.
So let's break it down. Who are these partners that are supporting our anti-corruption agencies?
Apart from INGO we have in the countries, Mercator, DFID, which is the FCDO now, Center for Democracy and Development have supported 7 anti-corruption agencies within the last 2 years around issue of capacity building, infrastructure development, and ICT.
So let's take it one by one. The 7 anti-corruption agencies that you have supported, can we know them and what kind of capacity?
The EFCC was supported, Both EFCC and EFCC Academy, ICPC was supported. Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, PACAC, was also supported. Technical Unit of Governance and Administration Reform was supported. TUGA, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, was supported. That is NFIU. Office of Auditor General was supported because we felt as number one anti-corruption agencies, Office of Auditor General, there are a lot of things that they lack. And that is why if you look at the legal framework that that office is working with, they are still working with the 1956 audit ordinance, which is a major issue. We can't be fighting corruption in the 21st century with pre-colonial law. So we need to look into that. And I know PLSI and
which one is PLSI?
Is a local NGO in Abuja. They have their office in Ibadan. They have been engaging with the Office of Auditor General around getting the audit bill passed, as well as Center LSD. They have been working closely with the Office of Auditor General. But as CDD and Mercator, those 7 agencies I mentioned, they were supported around infrastructure, around ICT, and upgrading of the academy to suit the 21st century purpose. So
specifically, what kind of, apart from training, what kind of infrastructure support did you give to them? CDD supported through Mercator grant on what we call Nigerian Anti-Corruption Agency Strengthening Initiative Project, NACASI, by providing ICT equipment for all the anti-corruption agencies that I mentioned, the 7 of them. They supported them in terms of capacity building for their staff by sending their staff abroad for training. Also, subscription for the server of NFIU. And the ICPC was supported around their constituency monitoring project, technically, as well as their electronic management system, where now, if you go to ICPC, they've all their files have been archived in electronic manner, meaning it will be difficult now at ICPC. You hear a case of lost file because everything has been archived electronically, and the chairman now can sit in his office and monitor what is going on across their offices, zonal offices and state offices. CDD, through the Mercator grant, supported ICPC by providing modern interrogation rooms, 7 interrogation rooms for ICPC.
For ICPC.
Wow.
Well equipped with modern facilities, camera. So when you are interviewing a suspect, the chairman will sit down in his office and be watching what is going on, which before the intervention is not like that. At Academy, EFCC Academy, it was completely overhauled since 2004 that academy was established. Nothing has been done by government in terms of funding. Through the CDD grant, academy was able to be refurbished with latest equipment, as well as NFIU. And this is an agency that got autonomy in 2018 from EFCC. And they lack equipment to work. Also, Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering was also supported through the CDD support. So apart from CDD support, there are other support from other civil society organizations in terms of training of anti-corruption agencies. CISLAC has been doing that in collaboration with Transparency International.
So CISLAC is Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center.
And that is the Transparency International chapter in Nigeria. So they've been doing that to augment what government is doing. As civil society, we can't turn ourselves to government. What we can do is to complement what the government is doing, especially in terms of funding, because the funding that they are giving to anti-corruption agencies is so minimal.
Very meager.
Meager to even do their work, and that is why we are advocating that ACA, like anti-corruption agencies like ICPC, should work more around the preventive mandate of the organization, because prevention is better than cure. To trace issue of corrupt activity in a particular MDA or outside the country cost us more. So we are encouraging ICPC to do more around corruption risk assessment, system review. As part of preventive measure, ICPC set up what we call anti-corruption and transparency unit across the federal ministry, department, and agency. It is called Act 2. This Act 2, the
anti-corruption
and transparency unit.
And transparency,
unit.
Okay,
it is called Act 2. And they have them.
And we have about 900 MDAs.
MDAs in Nigeria.
So there is anti-corruption and transparency unit in all the 900
most of the MDAs. And their major mandate is to strengthen the system, to give feedback to ICPC when they see something going wrong. And ICPC has conducted 2 or 3 series of corruption risk assessment across the MDAs, especially the what we call SDG focused MDAs, Sustainable Development Goals focused MDAs, education, water resources, and agric, as well as our port.
What of Health? Yes. Ministry of Health.
Ministry of Health also. And they've identified vulnerabilities as well as develop an integrity plan that they are now following up on the implementation. But 4 MDAs out of about 900 is like doing nothing. And there are organizations that are also working at state level. I know because the fight against corruption should not be concentrated at the federal if we really want to get it right. And that is why we are calling on civil society organization, media, to also do some level of engagement at state level. Up till now, after the NFIU memo on crediting of local government money directly into local government, nobody is tracking that, whether local government is getting that or not. Because what they are still doing is still jack process, where they do joint account stuff, where state governor will collect the money on behalf of the local government, but they will tell us that they are giving what is due to local government. But Niger State, for example, has also did some corruption risk assessment at Niger State SUBEB.
State Universal Basic Education,
which is
Commission,
a parastatal of Ministry of Education. I was part of the team that went to Niger State through the support from UNDP in 2017, where we identified some vulnerabilities in their system.
So when you talk about vulnerabilities, what exactly does that mean in anti-corruption terms?
Yes, people see it as wish hunting, but as a corruption risk assessor, we said it's not corruption risk assessment is not wish hunting. It's mainly to identify gaps in a system. That is why one of the mandates of EFCC is to do system review. Come to an MDA, look at their system. What is their payroll looks like? Who is the permanent secretary? Who are the directors? Because you can't have somebody from a particular zone as a minister, the same person from the same zone with minister is a permanent secretary, and maybe 10 out of 15 directors are from that same zone. Then that is a vulnerabilities. There is tendency that there could be collusion during the procurement process, because it will turn to what an average Hausa man will call namu namu. It is our own. It is our people. So it is a vulnerability. You can identify that. If we are still using table payment method, for example, as payment of salary, it's a vulnerability.
Which is table payment? Cash.
That is cash.
You're paying cash for staff.
Salary. Either casual or junior staff is a vulnerabilities. There are other vulnerabilities that we can identify through the corruption risk assessment. You can look at recruitment process, for example. How do they recruit? Do they advertise? Is it just during recruitment exercise, you just talk to senators, House of Reps member, and go and bring the list of your candidates? That is a vulnerability. We need to look at the system.
I need to pause you around that. Let's look at something. There was a breaking news which the Punch newspaper investigated, on which I've also weighed in. There was an allegation that there is a syndicate in the Ministry of Justice, in the office of Attorney General, who, I'm bringing us back to the issue of asset management. You said we are doing well with asset recovery, but we are not doing too well in asset management.
Yes.
So this story was that there is a syndicate in that office that is selling of federal government property and pocketing the proceeds. And, undervaluation and all manner of shady deals is going on. I don't know whether you've read the story. The Office of Attorney General is supposed to be an anti-corruption ministry because he serves as a coordinating minister for many of the anti-corruption agencies.
Yes.
So what's your take on that issue around asset management, disposal of asset recovery, the issue of asset register, and all of that? What's your take on that?
Thank you very much. I think that is one of the gaps we are trying to use POCAP, that is Proceeds of Crime Act, to close. Because for now, what we have is a committee on asset management, domiciled within the Federal Ministry of Justice, which is not good enough also for us as a country. Like I mentioned, at international level, as at 8 corps in Abu Dhabi, no country in the world has ever witnessed the type of recovery that Nigeria recovered. Is it the Abacha 1, 2, and 3? And Ibori loot and other loots like that. Even the domestic recovery is not a small one. But in terms of management, because no legal framework, the Attorney General set up a committee on asset management, which some of us frown at, because instead of having that committee, why not we work towards passage of Proceeds of Crime Act, where provision has been made for how to manage assets, whether you get interim forfeiture or final forfeiture during the trial. And this committee, I don't want to refer to them as syndicate, but Nigerians are not happy with that committee. Then apart from that, there is a larger committee set up on disposal of assets recovered. And it's taking time now for over a year now. That committee has been set up.
They were set up for 6 months.
Yeah, we have representative on that committee as civil society organization. Reverend David Ugolo, Secretary of ANIJ, is on that committee. And it was about a month ago that they advertised for about 600 who are shortlisted for the disposal. They've shortlisted contractors that will dispose of this asset. And the question is this: at the Attorney General office, they've also tried to bring all the asset recovery agencies, because it is only ICPC, FCC that people felt they are recovering assets. Nigerian Customs is recovering assets, Immigration is recovering assets, NDLEA is recovering assets, and many, even Nigerian Police, they are recovering assets. NCDC, they are recovering assets. So, and we should not leave them to use their discretion to dispose assets. If you are driving within the Abuja towards Central Mosque, you see a yard where they parked a lot of vehicles, including trailers full of petrol. I doubt we will still have those petrol in those trailers now.
It will have been siphoned.
Exactly, because of lack of coordinated management of assets and recovery.
In fact, there is this report that there are ships that were seized by EFCC that have sunk, on the high sea because of lack of maintenance or perhaps proper management of those forfeited assets.
I give you an example. When EFCC was investigating the former MD of one of the commercial banks in Nigeria, and they seized 4 dogs in his house, and to feed the dog became a problem for EFCC, because it was gathered that to feed that dog in a week, the 4 of them will take about 1 million naira. So now if you are going to feed 4 dogs with 1 million naira, almost 1 million naira under 1 week, and knowing well that our judiciary system is very slow, if it takes you 5-6 years to finish such case, it means you will continue feeding dogs with almost 1 million naira.
Should they have seized those dogs?
Yes, because it's part of the asset.
how can dog be as
It's part of
so if you see horses there, you take it. If you see fowl,
it's an asset.
I don't
because it can be valued.
Anyway, I don't
I
think
think later what EFCC did was to return those dogs.
Exactly, because of maintenance issues.
Sir, we can't manage this dog because even people that will be feeding the dog, I doubt if they can use such amount of money to even feed their own family.
Yes.
So, and those are the issues around asset management.
There's something that, you know, please, our viewers, you can weigh in on this discussion. We are looking at the appraiser or, you know, progress report on Nigeria's fight against corruption. Tomorrow is International Anti-Corruption Day, and I have with me Lukman Adefola, who has been shedding light on different aspects of Nigeria's fight against corruption. You can call us on the number on your screen if you have any information about how Nigeria can do better in the fight against corruption. So, Lukman, I'm coming back to you on this issue of management of recovered assets. People are talking about loot being relooted. So you go and recover loot, and because I mean somebody says something about this Dezani's assets recovered. There was huge cash that was also recovered on that day, that her house were raided. But nobody is mentioning the issue of cash again. We are only being told that she has $12.5 million worth of brazier, which EFCC ultimately, after about 1 month, debunked that there was no brazier. I mean, when you have that kind of cash, whose custody is that money supposed to be? And that's one. Two, when those anti-corruption agents goes to raid homes of suspects or their office, is there anything monitoring them to be sure that proper inventory was taken and that they did not help themselves with some of those assets that they claim they have gone to recover?
Thank you very much. I think I quite agree with you. And it is easy to even manage the cash component of assets recovered. Why? Because there is a dedicated account domicile in central bank,
okay,
as asset recovery account where you can pay such money into. But the challenge has been how to manage perishables or buildings. You can't get interim injunction for a property, say filling station, and you said because you have gotten interim injunction, people that are working there, you throw them away.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Means
people are losing jobs.
You are adding to the existing
or a hotel. Somebody where people are working and earning a living, and you shut it down.
Them out and you shut it down. And now what we are saying now is, let's have a legal framework. Once you seize an asset, either for interim, while you are waiting for final forfeiture, you can appoint somebody that will be managing it.
Yes, interim manager.
The proceed, you will be using that proceed to pay salaries, service such apartment. But that has been our major problem, and that is why I mentioned that we are recovering, but management of those recoveries is our major challenge, and it should go beyond setting up of committees. And during the review, it was also mentioned as recommendation that there is need for us to separate the office of Attorney General from the office of the Minister of Justice, and which I agree with that.
That has been an age-long suggestion, recommendation.
A Minister of Justice is always a politician. By the time you now have the same person who is a politician to also be the Attorney General of the Federation, definitely there will be conflict of interest, and that is why you can see Attorney General by constitutional right, he has right to call for any file from the end of anti-corruption agencies.
And we have been told that the file of
Odua has been called for. Before you know what is going on now, nobody will hear. Danjuma Agboje file was recalled for to settle for a post. Now, to the detriment of Nigerians, because of such power, So we are advocating that that office should be separated as well too.
Oh, okay, because of time, you can still join us. We can take 1 or 2 calls, and that's the number on your screen if you want to weigh in on the fight against corruption. I'm just looking at, just run us through few of those anti-corruption laws in the National Assembly that needed to be passed as soon as possible for us to tighten the nuts and bolts of anti-corruption in Nigeria.
The key one is the audit bill pending before National Assembly.
Audit bill, yes. Audit
bill, because you will agree with me that under this administration, Auditor General's report showed that we have highest number of MDAs that refuse to submit their annual report, which is an infraction.
Sorry, let's take this call. It might be the only one we'll take. Hello?
Yeah, hello, Gideon Ojo. Good morning.
Good morning. What's the name and where are you calling from?
My name is Mike. I'm calling from Central Area.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Okay. Very quickly, I want to say 2 things. One is for you, and the other one is for maybe the gentleman you're working with there. The first thing is, I will suggest, because you're doing a very good job, I will suggest that every of those things you're saying, inside the fact that yes, these people are watching it online or on air and all that, you should package it as a kind of a report to some of these people that these things might that might need it directly, and present to them and say, okay, these are the suggestions of Nigerians over this. Like you're treating this particular subject now, you package those things and send to them as a right of essay report. From what you gathered from the program you're doing on air, it will help them so that they can have a kind of review, look at it, and then try to, because it's not all the time that most of those people have the time to look and follow most of this program bomber to bomber, like we do. And the second one is in line with what the gentleman has said, that they should stop shutting down the kind of business centers, business areas. You just come to a place and you find out that EFCC shuts down under investigation. It's not done. You don't do things that way. You look at, okay, this place is under, you would not even let the people know you are investigating them, and then the business will be going on, business will be good, people will be, doing the normal things there, and at the end of the day, when you are found them, guilty, then you can now bring down this place, and then immediately turn it over to somebody that will continue running the business. Not to just, because he's guilty, you just close it down. I don't know if you get the point I'm making.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's the much we can take from you. Your point is well noted. Michael is saying, Michael is saying that we should endeavor to package the video of some of this, discussion to anti-corruption agencies, so that they can watch and learn from it. And then the second one, he agreed with you that instead of shutting down businesses and ejecting out of residential apartment, let an interim manager take place. So let's take this one last and final call. Hello? Hello? Oh, sorry. We lost that. So you are running us through very quickly because our time is spent.
I mentioned audit bill.
Audit bill.
Very critical.
Yes.
And I justify why we need that.
Yes. Audit bill.
The whistleblowing protection bill.
Yes.
Is very, very critical. President of Crime and Act is very also critical when we want to talk about asset management. If we can get these three have been pending before National Assembly. If we get these three right and we try to amend our Public Procurement Act, it will really help us in fighting corruption. Final word. Where do you see us heading in the fight against corruption? Yes, I'm seeing us getting it right. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the discussion that we were not where we are. We have moved, and we may not be there where we supposed to be. Let me see whether we can. Oh, sorry, just land. So we won't be able to take we are on the right path, but we need political will, especially around open government partnership. If we get open government partnership right, you are going to come back to run us through that. Today we are just looking at the overview
of our appraisal of the fight against corruption. Definitely, there is a lot more to talk about. Issue of asset management, issue of open government partnership, issue of even civic education. How can we use civic education to change mindset and attitude in the fight against corruption to get the buy-in of average Nigeria? I want to thank you very much, Lukman Adefola, for coming on the show. You've done extremely well. I look forward to seeing you some other time. Compliment of the season and my regards to your family as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Nigerians.